If you're going to the kitchen to get a snack, bring me some. I'll be right back.
Look, it's Elf!
Elf? It's Paul's. Look, smooth toffee cream.
It's Elf.
With orange vanilla.
Elf.
With toffee ice.
It's Elf.
A delicious chuck back. Elf.
You're out of this world. Give me 4, no problem.
Ah, Paul's Elf. How did I miss that?
Let's go check out the old fridge. Yeah.
Smooth toffee cream and vanilla with a choc back. You'll love it.
You're okay. Someone without fur.
Battle of the Network shows. Join Rick Brooks and Mike Kogel as they explore the TV of the 70s and 80s through hand-picked episodes of their favorite and not-so-favorite series. And welcome back to Battle of the Network shows. I'm Rick, and I'm here with my friend Mike. And Mike, you have chosen today to look at an episode of the series ALF.
I have. And I chose it purely out of vengeance and spite for another show we have or will talk about. And so ALF, if you don't know, ALF was kind of a phenomenon, briefly. From 1986 to 1990, it aired on NBC. The phenomenon part was probably only like a year of that, but and it's pretty easy to explain. It's about an alien from the planet Melmac, which I had forgotten until this episode, was destroyed by a nuclear holocaust. He's the sole survivor, and he ends up living with a kind of typical sitcom family, and they have to, hide him. ALF stands for alien life form. His real name is Gordon Shumway, and he likes to eat cats. He never eats them on the show, but that's what they ate on Melmac.
No, he's always trying.
Yeah, right. And he's I would describe him as a kind of vaudevillian personality. Does that sound right?
Yes, he's got a very old school type of humor.
Yeah, and it kills him.
Yes, many things do, but apparently not a nuclear holocaust.
Yeah, well, he got out.
Yeah.
I don't remember the details of how he escaped, but
I didn't remember that detail either.
No, that's pretty grim when you think about that. They also had a cartoon set on Melmac.
About a doomed planet, essentially.
Yeah, about the fun life of Gordon Shumway and all his friends and his girlfriend Rhonda. And they're all dead, except for him.
Yes, but in the live action, the cartoon,
right.
they're destined to die in a nuclear holocaust.
Yeah.
It's not, but it's not a dramatization of them.
No. But it's hovering over
yes.
everything that happens in the cartoon. Yeah.
There aren't too many sitcoms that I can think of off the top of my head. And I could get in trouble for saying this, because we'll come up with something right after we record.
Exactly.
That are kicked off by a nuclear holocaust. That doesn't seem like a fertile landscape for comedy.
Get a Life sometimes ended in one, right?
Correct, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Many episodes of that ended with the characters being blown up or obliterated, but they didn't begin with the characters being blown up or obliterated. So
now, I've been told that the cartoon Adventure Time, that world is... Hey, I just got a text. The
Survivor from Melmac chiming in.
Yes.
Untold stories. Somebody that got out.
Yeah. I've been told that Adventure Time is set in a post-apocalyptic world, and that's why it's so weird.
That would explain a lot, yeah.
Yeah. So ALF was a puppet, played by a puppet. Not played by a puppet. Played by someone...
That'd be pretty
operating
cool if you had a puppet playing a puppet.
Now, from the episode we're going to talk about, it's clear that sometimes it was also maybe a person in a suit.
Yes.
For certain shots. And the notable actors in my mind, Max Wright as Willie, the beset upon Willie. And Max Wright had some issues later in his life. And their neighbor, Mrs. Achmanek, played by the woman who played Jerry Seinfeld's mom on Seinfeld. I don't know her name.
Liz Sheridan, I
think.
Thank
you, Liz Sheridan.
I just was reminded that watching the episode, I couldn't really remember her name either. But
And I think you're going to kind of run down this, what happened in this episode.
Sure, yes. This is I think we could agree this is an atypical episode of ALF.
Yeah, and yet it might be a good gateway.
It could be a good gateway. Well, the episode is called Tonight, Tonight, and originally I thought it was Tonight, Tonight, Tonight.
Me too.
I thought it was going to involve ALF, traveling through an urban landscape on a vengeance-filled quest as Genesis song "Tonight, Tonight, Tonight" blared in the soundtrack. But unfortunately, that's not the case.
Was "Tonight, Tonight"? That's obviously a song too.
From West Side Story, I guess.
Oh, okay. Oh, right.
I'll spare everyone me singing it. But ALF, this episode of ALF aired Monday, October 24th, 1988, on the NBC network. And as the episode begins, something unusual happens. You do not see the ALF theme song as you normally would, but actually the Tonight Show theme song and the Tonight Show opening credits are playing with ALF instead of Johnny Carson. And Ed McMahon, God bless him, Ed McMahon showed up for this. He is actually announcing the show, but it's the Tonight Show with special guest host ALF. And Ed McMahon even gives a spirited "Here's Alfie." So what we're getting, and there's no other context for this. It just begins with the Tonight Show hosted by ALF. The Tonight Show Orchestra then plays the ALF theme song, actually, as ALF comes out on stage. And ALF does come out on stage, presumably a guy in a suit at this point. And he introduces everybody in the crowd. He says, "I'm ALF, the answer to the question, who's the only NBC star with more hair than Michael Landon?" Which, of course, gets raucous applause and cheers from the audience. And then ALF actually goes into a monologue, and there's really nothing to address why this is happening. We're just still in the Tonight Show that happens to be hosted by ALF, although it's made clear that he is a guest host. Hasn't taken over the show or anything, at least not permanently. But he begins his monologue, and he jokes with Ed, and Tommy Newsom is guiding the Tonight Show Orchestra tonight. And ALF actually even makes a setup for, he talks about how hot it is, and the studio audience asks, "How hot was it?" And ALF just says, "What am I, a thermometer?" He doesn't do one of those classic Carson "How hot was it" jokes, but he goes on. The announced guests for this episode are to be Joan Embery, Joyce Brothers, Dr. Joyce Brothers, and Pope John Paul II. After we hear the ALF theme and the monologue, they go to a commercial. They come back, and it's still ALF sitting in the chair, and he decides to show some clips from a show, ALF. So he starts showing clips from his own show, and at this point, it becomes clear that it's ALF, the real-life person, not the character in the TV show, but ALF is introducing clips. It's ALF, the celebrity, hosting the Tonight Show, not ALF, the character, if that makes sense. He does a little bit with Ed about roles that he hasn't gotten before, and it's kind of a classic Tonight Show desk comedy bit. Ed is sitting right next to him. He even does Melmac the Magnificent, which of course is a takeoff on Karnak, Johnny Carson's character. And he actually is stealing Johnny Carson's bit from the next night, and Ed gets worried because he says, "Oh, that's Johnny's turban, and what's Johnny going to do tomorrow night?" But ALF says something like, "Johnny's free to do it tomorrow if he wants to, too," which is, very magnanimous of him. But he does he does a few classic jokes where he gives the answer, and then he reveals the question, if you've seen the bit, and he does things like, "Red Square," he says, and Ed McMahon repeats, "Red Square," and ALF says, "Yes, Red Square," and he says, "What do you call the blotch on Mikhail Gorbachev's head?" And things like that. And then the last one he does, which I don't remember the whole joke, but it's "Cat on a Hot Tin Roof." I think it's something about what's dinner on Melmac or something like that. So again, you get the bit about liking cats in there too. So then ALF decides to introduce his first guest, and he gives a big introduction talking about how it's somebody that's influenced a lot of lives around the world, somebody that's done a lot of good, and it turns out to be Dr. Joyce Brothers. Of course, everybody's expecting the Pope, but it's actually Dr. Joyce Brothers. There's a brief misunderstanding because ALF had her mixed up with Dr. Ruth, who was a big sex advice icon of the 80s, but it is not as Dr. Joyce, and much to ALF's chagrin, she has no clips with her. Fortunately, he brought extra, so he shows some more clips of his show. And throughout the series, throughout the episode, he's showing sort of a loose theme to these clips, but basically they're just highlights from the previous couple seasons, I guess. ALF eventually insults Dr. Joyce Brothers to the point where she walks off, and then the producer, Freddie DeCordova, walks out, and he urges ALF to go ahead and bring out Pope John Paul II, understandably. And ALF decides to do that, but the Pope happens to be in the restroom at the time, so instead Joan Embery from the San Diego Zoo, a frequent Tonight Show visitor herself, she comes out with a cat, which gets ALF's interest. But unfortunately, Joan didn't bring any clips either, so ALF shows some more clips from his show, and eventually Joan Embery walks out. After a short break, Freddie DeCordova comes out with the phone, and he says there's a call for ALF, and he says it's Mr. Carson for ALF, not Johnny, Mr. Carson, I might add. And ALF basically gets nervous, tries to hide, and he throws it to another commercial. Then when we come back, Alf tries to sweet talk Johnny Carson on the phone. He even offers to hit the hot tub with him later. But Johnny Carson actually hangs up on him. Clearly, Johnny's not happy with what's going on with the show, which apparently he's watching live via some satellite feed somewhere in Malibu. So we get more clips, including a pretty cool montage of Alf destroying stuff or breaking stuff, and even more clips. And then Alf does Johnny Carson's old Art Fern routine, with Art Fern, the pitchman, which is sort of lifted from an old Jackie Gleason character, but was made famous by Johnny Carson as well. And Ed and Fred sitting over by the couch, they're not happy about this at all. Even another frequent Carson guest, Teresa Ganzel, comes out to be the spokesmodel that helps Art Fern in the sketch. Ed suggests that they talk about Melmac, Alf's planet. I don't remember Ed mentioning anything about a nuclear holocaust, so it seems like an awkward topic of conversation. But Alf decides to show some clips that revolve around Melmac and customs from Melmac. After that, the Pope is back, and Alf holds him just a little bit more so they can play some more clips. And then who should show up but yet another frequent Tonight Show guest, Rich Little. Rich Little shows up. Alf is very surprised. I don't know why he should be surprised. I think Rich Little was on quite a bit. Actually, there might have been some more to that, but maybe we'll get into that later. So then Rich says, as Johnny Carson, and actually I should interrupt here real quickly to say to the listeners, I'm not going to make anybody sit through a Johnny Carson impersonation, an Ed McMahon impersonation, or even my fabled Max Wright impersonation in this recording. Mike, you're free to do so later, but I'm not going to do
There
that.
might be an Ed McMahon.
Okay. Fair enough. I'm just saying that I'm not going to do it. So Rich Little basically says, as Johnny Carson, that he was told, get over there in 86, that troublemaking buffoon. And to which Alf replies, hey, if Ed goes, I go, which I actually thought was pretty funny. And Rich Little didn't bring any clips either. So Alf decides to show one last clip. He calls it Alf in Remembrance. And after that, Alf closes the show. He says it was the greatest show ever. And then he remembers to bring out Pope John Paul II. But at that time, they're pretty much out of time. So he thanks the guests, says bye, and that's the end of the episode. There's never any context. It's one of the most bizarre things, something they did. And I think I pretty much covered what actually happens in the show.
Yeah.
It's Alf hosting the Tonight Show with a whole host of clips from the show, and I should mention also it's an hour long. It's a double episode.
Yeah,
of Alf.
And I apologize because I didn't realize that until I was halfway through it, and I paused and saw that I was only halfway through it.
Yeah.
So 38 minutes.
Well, it was twice the hour.
Exclaimed to myself, 38 minutes, and then hit play again. And I also didn't realize it was a clip show.
Right.
The appeal was Alf on the Tonight Show. And
Yes.
we both thought maybe it would be a dream sequence, something. It turned out to be this, which there's a lot of different things going on. I mean, you got the clip show aspect of it, which in a way it's kind of a terrible clip show because the clips barely have any context either.
Right.
Like a typical clip show would be the family sitting around and like, oh, remember that time you revealed your identity to the
Yes.
to the world, to your neighbors? Remember that time you got caught in a lab? These are some things that happened in the clips he showed us. Remember that time you showed up at our Halloween party with a zipper velcroed to your chest?
Right.
Instead, it's just like, some of them are like, here he's breaking stuff, but some of them are just a bunch of clips strung together, and they all seem to be from the same 3 or 4 episodes.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's very unusual. I don't know how they selected it. That's kind of what makes me wonder, is it really a good gateway for viewers of Alf? The
Right.
fact that the clips aren't necessarily representative of the show,
Yeah.
but the episode maybe is representative of Alf the character.
I think, that, and it does save you the trouble of having to deal with the kids.
So you were not a fan of the kids?
My memory of the kids is like, no.
There's a
No,
scene-
I did write down a note about the daughter's pants because they were very 80s. She had some, in one scene, she had like some good sort of Bugle Boy pleated pants going on.
Yeah.
That might be a curiosity too. Like, we see, people faking up the 80s all the time now.
Mm-hmm.
But to go back and look at any of these shows from the 80s and just see how they were dressing them, especially maybe on a sitcom like this where they're kind of, other than the Alf part, trying to present them as regular people.
I think we could probably learn a lot about what life was really like from sitcoms of the 80s, and if it wasn't really like it back then, it should be how it was portrayed in the 80s, so I would agree with that point.
And Alf, too, is always skewering the pop culture of the 80s. I think in the opening, because you get the Tonight Show credits, but you also get the regular Alf credits after the T's. And I believe there's at least one shot of him in Born in the USA, Bruce Springsteen style outfit.
Yeah. With like a headband?
Yeah, he had the headband, or the handkerchief around his, and the jean jacket vest and a guitar. He also plays, or pretends to play saxophone in that theme song, or the opening credits. But
he's not actually playing saxophone?
I don't know.
I'm a little disappointed.
Well, it's interesting because I don't know if you noticed this, but I remember this from when I was a kid. But the composer Alf Clausen did the theme song, which is just weird.
Yeah.
I feel like.
Right. Was that a coincidence?
Yeah. It's very strange.
Or did they go around, Hollywood looking through musicians' unions and composers to find somebody who happened to have the same name as the show? So, and then as soon as he walked in, you're hired.
Yeah.
They saw his resume.
Exactly. Because this episode at least, there are a lot of meta kind of things going on.
True.
So they might have done that.
It's possible. And before we get to there, I also want to mention that the theme song, and this was not the theme song I remembered. It was a more saxophone-driven version, whereas I kind of remember more of a keyboard kind of driven, like a little different version.
Yeah.
This was kind of more of a jazzy kind of like we've been on the show. Even though this is only the third season of Alf, it felt to me kind of like this is a show that's been on 5 or 6 years and is trying to stay relevant kind of theme song.
Right.
So I was a little surprised that they went to this variant that early, but
yeah, it reminded me of some music we were listening to recently.
Yeah.
From the movie Murphy's Romance.
Yeah, some 1980s. Yes, which I'll point out that we were watching that music for a different project. We weren't.
Right.
We didn't just happen to be sitting around
watching Murphy's Romance.
Two guys on a Saturday night watching Murphy's Romance.
People can do that.
Yeah, sure, people would do that. We just didn't happen to in this case.
We both like James Garner.
We do.
I think we both like Sally Field.
Sure.
Why not?
Right. We both didn't like the music in Murphy's Romance.
No, very inappropriate. Anyway, I actually want to go back to the Tonight Show credits.
Okay.
I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the way they inserted the little bits from Alf in the TV screens they were going by.
Mm-hmm.
I was a little disappointed that they didn't really go for it and recreate all the little bits that would have been in the real Tonight Show credits, but with Alf.
Like Alf in place of Johnny Carson.
Like it was clearly just stuff from the show. They didn't film new stuff.
Right. They could have done a little bit extra with that.
Yeah.
Like having Alf almost get hit in the crotch with a tomahawk chop. Or
Exactly.
I guess that wasn't actually in the credits. That was one of the more famous scenes.
It might have been.
Ed Ames almost threw a tomahawk at Johnny Carson. But stuff like that. Yeah, that would have been a cool little bit to do.
But as it is, it seems like they put a lot of effort into a clip show.
They did. It was definitely an interesting structure for a clip show. It was a little bit more. It was maybe a little bit more disjointed as far as the clips, but definitely more creative than the approach you mentioned earlier, where people are just sitting around and reminiscing.
Yeah. It was exciting.
Yeah.
That's not the word. It was like, but it did. But that was the other thing I was going to say. That so you got the clip show, but also the sort of character hosting a talk show. That's kind of a sub-genre of like taking a regular character and sticking them in that setting. Kramer did it on Seinfeld.
Right, and there was
Troy and Abed did it.
Yeah.
At the end of an episode of Community.
The cheers where Cliff Clavin imagined himself being on the Tonight Show.
Right. Yeah.
That was a popular thing, and I think Alf did a pretty good job as host of the Tonight Show. He was very egocentric, but you have to have an ego to be in that role. He definitely wasn't as giving a host as Johnny Carson is.
No. Well, who is?
Well, but
he's
then
the
again,
king.
He was the king of late night, but now I noticed at the end it says we gratefully acknowledge the cooperation of the Tonight Show. I have to wonder how did the conversation go when they were trying to get Johnny Carson's blessing to do this, because I don't think this is like 1988. Johnny may not have been at his peak, but he was a pretty powerful guy at NBC, and I can't imagine they would have done this without getting his permission. And I wonder how timid they were about it. I mean, you think they even brought up the idea of him possibly appearing on the show?
They probably brought it up, but at the same time, this is not too long before his retirement, and this is the period when they were making decisions about the future of the show without his involvement.
So what
But maybe he was a game player as far as the network went, because they were like, well, Alf is one of our biggest stars.
Right.
Can we use your set and Ed and not Doc? But I guess that would be normal for a guest host, right?
Yeah.
And Freddie, and just do this, and it maybe it's okay.
So
maybe they paid him a lot of money.
Reading between the lines, yeah. Reading between the lines, it kind of sounds like you're saying maybe Johnny actually decided to retire because of this episode.
I was kind of going there, yeah. This is the
is
straw
what
that
drove
broke
him to retirement. He became totally disillusioned with hosting the Tonight Show after seeing what NBC did to his beloved franchise.
Right. I don't know if Bill Carter addressed that in the late shift.
I don't recall that. That may be one of the only things he didn't cover in there, but
Right.
I'll have to go back and take a look at that. But
Maybe
we
should
should
write him a letter and ask him what
yeah, maybe
what role did Alf play in the decision for Johnny Carson to retire.
Maybe we can tweet him.
Yeah, that would be faster. So, yeah, I thought though Alf had to learn a lot of the aspects of hosting, like that there's a logical order to guests.
Yeah, he was pretty
Religious
much freestyling.
figures first,
Yes.
then doctors, then people from zoos, which does make sense. I mean, certainly you'd have the Pope on first.
One would think, yeah. In a talk show, you don't save the best for last. You bring out that first guest right away, or the most important guest as the first guest. And Alf didn't do that.
No, but I enjoyed his monologue.
Alf's monologue?
Yeah, I did. I mean, he's that character is sort of built for that type of joke.
Yeah, he seemed comfortable doing it, and he's sort of got like a late night monologue / like it kind of reminds me of, it's almost like award show kind of humor.
Yeah.
Like, to me, that character would be well suited to host some kind of cheesy award show, or kind of some of that old showbiz kind of thing. I mean, kind of what you were alluding to with the vaudeville kind of reference.
Yeah.
It's sort of a predictable humor, but it is what it is, and that's Alf's style, and he definitely brings that to the Tonight Show.
Yeah. Now, that is also when we get the couple weird shots of him standing. And I still don't... It was a little person in a suit, but it almost had the feel of, like, Dorf.
Yes.
Because the legs weren't
Another
really
80s
moving.
phenomenon.
Yeah, where a person kneels and then puts fake feet on the knees.
Yes, popularized by Tim Conway
as
Dorf
Dorf,
character, who appeared in, like, I think it was VHS tapes that
At
sold
Dorf on Golf.
with commercials. Yes.
So it looked a little bit like that because the legs weren't doing anything. On the other hand, now I'm thinking maybe it was a version of that. So he was still a puppet, and the puppeteers were somehow hiding, like we're below the legs or something.
Right.
I mean, it's a two-person puppet too because of his hands and it might be more than two people. I don't know, but it's an involved puppet. It still looks. I mean, Muppets look weird when you see them. With their legs too.
Right.
It's just, it somehow spoils the illusion.
Yeah, and on regular show episodes of Alf, he's often, standing behind a couch or something, or sitting at a table. You don't see that kind of shot with Alf very often on the regular show.
No.
So it is kind of jarring to see him, for one thing, to see him in this setting to begin with, but let alone to see him on stage standing up and kind of rocking back and forth on his heels or whatever, while the band's playing to a commercial. So
he's wearing clothes. That's also a little odd for Alf.
It is. That's one concession apparently he made to the system, to the corporate machine of NBC.
So now, what about this idea that Alf is an actor, or so? In the world of this episode, Alf is on a show called Alf, portraying himself, and all the stuff about Alf is true. I don't know about him living in a house with the Tanners, but everything else about coming from Melmac and all that. And yet, he's on the Tonight Show as Gordon Shumway or Alf, talking about that. It's weird.
Yes, it's almost like, so Alf is presumably an autobiographical sitcom.
Right.
But in that bit with Ed at the beginning of the show, the Tonight Show, he mentions, roles he did not get that he tried out for. I mean, and granted, it's a comedy bit, but there's still a premise that he's an actor that's done a lot of different things, and he just happens to be doing this show called Alf right now. Yeah.
Which wasn't a conceit of the regular show.
No.
So, it's just interesting.
It is.
That they would go there, but then I guess, so that would have been a conceit of like the Jack Benny Show, or even the Muppet Show had that weird kind of meta vibe to it.
Right, or Burns and Allen did the same thing, where
Yeah.
they're playing themselves on a show, and
Right.
people that run a show. Gary Shandling's show in the 80s.
Gary Shannon's show, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. And also, I'll mention now that I was looking at the credits of this episode, and I saw, at the end, a couple of the writers were Al Jean and Mike Reese, who I know they were both Tonight Show writers at the time. So
really?
apparently there was some official cooperation with this.
Okay.
And they later went on to become writers and then showrunners on The Simpsons.
Right.
So when you talk about, meta and self-referential comedy and postmodernism, there you go.
Yeah. What did you think of the acting of the Tonight Show regulars?
Ed McMahon is a trooper. He's always game. Ed McMahon's sort of a fascinating person to me.
Yeah.
I think Ed was fine. Freddie DeCordova, he was a Hollywood personality for years.
Right.
I thought they were pretty good. I thought they were believable as themselves.
Okay. They seemed a little stiff to me. And I think it was just because it was scripted.
Yeah. Or possibly because in the back of their minds they're scared to death that Johnny Carson's going to fire them for being on the show
Right.
in the first place.
Yeah.
That could be inhibiting their performances now that I think about it.
They could be. Also, speaking of Ed being a trooper, I feel like Alf was way meaner to him than... I know Johnny would, take jabs at him, but
Yeah.
Alf took 1,000 jabs at him.
Alf came out swinging right away.
Yeah.
There wasn't a honeymoon period, two guys getting to know each other.
Right.
No, Alf seemed to be loaded for bear right away.
Yeah. And Ed seemed to take it. But now I guess part of that, too, is that since Alf was so bad at bringing out guests,
Yeah.
that Ed was on way more, on camera way more than normal.
Yeah, Ed might have enjoyed that, actually.
I'm sure he did, yeah.
Well, I'll tell you one thing that I didn't mention is Alf breaks Johnny's cup during the show.
He
too.
does.
And Ed is, right away, Ed's like, oh, that's Johnny's cup.
Yeah.
So...
I'm sure it was a prop.
that would have been incredibly meta if he actually broke Johnny's real cup.
By accident?
Yeah.
And they left it in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They decided to run with it.
Yeah. And they didn't tell anyone. And that cup... So a friend of ours recently noticed in a clip that Stephen Colbert seems to have Johnny's cup.
Interesting.
And wouldn't it be interesting if he didn't really have his cup? He had the one they had, a replica that they had to make because Alf broke.
Right. What's the
Alf
lineage of that cup?
broke the cup, yeah.
I don't want to be the one to rain on Stephen Colbert's parade,
No,
but he could be walking around with an imposter cup.
That's right.
Or at least one that doesn't have the lineage that the other cup did.
Yeah.
That's a distinct possibility. Alf was very careless
He was.
behind the desk. He was...
He definitely did something to the dressing room.
Yeah, that's right. They do make a
And the
comment
limo.
on that. Yeah. I don't even want to know what was going on.
I don't either, frankly.
But Johnny was not happy about it.
No.
We don't hear even when Johnny's on the phone when Mr. Carson is on the phone with Alf, we don't hear Johnny's voice at all. So there's no actual trace of Johnny Carson in the episode.
Right.
But
They didn't even use Rich Little off camera to do that.
yeah, they did not. They could have tried to go with that, but no.
Right.
And I think actually Rich Little was at one point I think he was feuding with Johnny, or maybe it was after this. I think at one point Johnny didn't want him on the Tonight Show anymore. They stopped inviting him. But
Really?
I guess at this point probably not the case, or he only went on with guest hosts or something like that.
That could be.
But I mean, it's definitely a classic lineup of guests. Joyce Brothers, Joan Embery, Rich Little, all famed for being on the Tonight Show.
And the Pope part is interesting because, so this was 1988. That's around the time I started watching late night shows.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that summer I was watching stuff, and was when the Pope visited America and the United States, and Johnny kept having the guy that was an Alf, the Pope imitator, just show up and wave, and there was just some running gag.
Yeah.
He would be in the audience and stuff like that. So
I'm glad you mentioned that. I didn't remember that at all.
yeah.
And the guy that they have portraying the Pope is a pretty good. I mean, he doesn't speak or
He
anything.
looks like him,
He just
yeah.
comes out and wave. But he's a pretty good.
Facsimile.
Yes, excellent word. That's what I was looking for. A great
Right.
facsimile of Pope John Paul II.
Yeah.
But it was an interesting episode, but definitely not not an example of a typical episode of ALF, but are you saying that? So you didn't much care for the domestic aspect of ALF, or just the kids?
My memory is that I liked Willie, and I liked Alf.
Yeah.
They were a comedy duo. Alf was always making things hard for Willie.
Yes.
I don't remember liking anybody else on the show.
Well, I actually did like the daughter as a kid.
Okay.
She was kind of like not just the genes, but like her hair. She definitely had that kind of whole '80s aura about her.
Yeah.
But I would say, like in a lot of like those family sitcoms of the '80s, you would have a character who would be sort of portrayed as the girl next door. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think she definitely had that sort of girl next door thing. So I think me and my friends probably had a crush on her.
Yeah.
A nice little TV crush on that actress that
Right.
played Lynn, I think was the daughter's name. So
Yeah.
I enjoyed her. Now the kid, Brian, I think the son.
Yeah. I'm remembering the actor's name was Benji something.
Yeah, him I could do with that.
Yeah. And he didn't. He was a kind of a non-entity in most of the clips.
Yeah, the clips really the family was definitely de-emphasized. I mean, there was Willie, but
Yeah.
yeah, like you said, the clips. It was an odd assortment of clips to choose.
Yeah. I guess since Alf chose them, they were going to be Alf-centric.
Right.
You know.
And
Maybe if he'd let someone else choose them, they would have focused on the whole ensemble.
I actually enjoyed this show because of the sort of the uniqueness of the gimmick and the concept. But it's one of those things where I suspect maybe there's maybe some behind the scenes stuff that's a little bit more interesting than the show itself.
Yeah.
Just the fact that they're having a clip show in maybe a month or two into the third season, that seems a little premature.
Yeah.
And
Do you think it was like up against baseball or something?
Oh, Monday Night Football, I guess it
Yeah.
would have been up against.
Okay.
Or maybe you're
was
thinking like
early
the World Series
it was
or something.
October, right?
Yeah.
Although NBC might have had the World Series.
Yeah, I think NBC would have had those like the A's Dodgers probably back then. I think NBC probably would have had the World Series. I'm thinking maybe it was against Monday Night Football at the time, but
Okay.
I'm wondering if they came up with that Tonight Show gimmick and then realized they couldn't just do 60 minutes of that, and then
Right.
or if it was the other way around, they needed a creative way to do a clip show.
Yeah.
It would have been interesting if they had brought out Max Wright
Right.
for example, as a guest and talked about the relationship between them on the show, and then they
Yeah.
sort of kind of went into that same relationship out there as Alf
Right.
and Max Wright instead of
Yeah.
Alf and Willie.
I think so. Like like if a show did something like that now, where only the lead showed up, I would assume it was a budget thing.
Yeah.
Because a lot of shows, even the lead actors don't show up on every episode because they can't afford them all. But I don't know if that was the case back then. And I don't know, season 3, and none of those actors were, I don't think, known quantities before that show.
No.
I don't think they were exactly demanding high salaries.
If anything, I think they were probably a little disappointed to find out they weren't getting a check that week, or
Yeah.
they were just going to be in clips.
Right. Ed McMahon's getting their check.
Yeah.
He's not bringing them a giant check.
No, he's not.
He's getting their check.
Nice. Yes. So Ed is taking food off their table.
He is. Yeah. I like that there was a reference to TV's bloopers and practical jokes.
I must have missed that one. I don't quite remember that.
It was one of Alf's digs.
Okay.
He said, I like that show with all the mistakes.
Right. Okay.
And
Yeah.
it's like TV's bloopers and practical jokes, and Alf says, no, Star Search.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yes. Not.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, he gets digs in it. Ed's drinking and
Yeah, was that a drinking dig or just a Budweiser dig?
like being a pitchman kind
Yeah.
of dig. Yeah. I guess probably a little bit of both, maybe.
Right.
Yeah.
That was hard to interpret.
Yeah. You're probably right. Probably more of a pitchman thing.
Yeah.
So Alpha's a little bit harder on him, but Johnny got it. Johnny did a little bit more picking and choosing, I guess.
Right. And I'm sure it hurt more when Johnny did it.
Yeah, it stung a little bit more.
Yeah, because they had this long professional relationship.
Yeah.
I'm sure Ed wanted to be his friend, or maybe they were. I don't know all the details of that. I know it's probably complicated relationship. But,
It is. I remember Howard Stern trying to ask Ed McMahon that and not getting a straight answer out of him, and being frustrated that Ed McMahon wouldn't basically just say that he hated Johnny Carson, or resented him for not being friends with him. But
right.
I don't know. I'd like to think. I hope Ed and Alf got along off camera and
I hope so.
during the filming of this episode.
I don't know. I mean, Alf didn't seem to be. Well, Alf just is not a tactful person.
He really isn't. He did seem to clash with Ed and Freddie DeCordova, but he did go over pretty well with the studio audience.
Yeah, and that's true. And he learned his lesson by the end. He was kind of apologetic, and and did bring out the Pope. And,
He did.
you know, I don't know if he had a full growth, like there was a full arc, but I would think the Alf hosting the show at the end wouldn't have had Dr. Joyce Brothers storm off the set.
You think he's changed a little bit by the end of the episode.
Enough so that he wouldn't have done it.
It would be interesting to see another episode of The Tonight Show hosted by Alf, but I think I'd rather it be 30 minutes instead of 60 minutes next time.
Yeah.
I
No,
kinda get my fill.
let me posit this idea. Do you think it was a tryout to have Alf as a regular guest host?
They're floating him out there.
Right.
You know what? I like that theory. That explains all this. Why they did this, why they did this episode, why it was so bizarre. I think that's an excellent idea.
NBC wanted to keep the Alf brand alive.
Yeah,
They knew, Jay was going to take over. I don't know if they knew then, but we're definitely in that era.
Yeah.
They were looking that way. And, of course, and Jay was like just the guest host all the time then, at that point, right?
This early, I guess, was this... Yeah, this was after Joan Rivers, I guess, had already
Yeah.
probably crashed and burned with her show. So
Right.
Joan was out of the picture. I don't think... Yeah, there certainly wasn't any talk about succession or when Johnny retires. But, NBC might have had that in the back of their minds.
Yeah.
And maybe this is a little power play to get some leverage over Johnny in the next contract
Right.
negotiations. Hey, if you ask for the house or if you want to work 3 days a week, we got Gordon Shumway here. Could step right in, not miss a beat.
Yeah.
It might have backfired a little bit because it didn't go totally smoothly, but I wouldn't put it past him. I think that's a good theory.
I think another month or two of shows and Alf would have, had it under control.
Right. And back in 1988, you would have had your time maybe to find yourself. The glare of the
Yeah.
media, social media wasn't as intense. He might have had a couple months to sort of grow and retain as much of the audience as he could and maybe build his own Alf brand on The Tonight Show. Today, though, it would be difficult if you had a first episode like that
Yeah.
or a guest show. It might not even make air, actually.
Yeah. Although, plenty of talk show hosts still get criticized for making the show about them.
This is true.
One with a similar hairstyle to Alf.
Yeah, but...
Although so Conan is always making fun of himself,
right.
but there is still a lot of focus on him.
True.
Yeah.
That's true. But at least he's not showing clips of his
No.
old shows the whole time when he's bringing guests out.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where Alf crossed the
Right.
line a little bit.
It seemed to be that Alf, the character, his entire understanding of talk shows was that people brought clips.
Right.
So he brought a bunch.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
And in his point of view, it turned out to be a good thing because Joyce Brothers, Joan Embery, none of them had clips.
Yeah, why
So
didn't they have clips?
He played some of his. He brought some for everybody, apparently.
And Joan Embery, we should mention that she brought a snake, but Alf apparently replaced it with a cat. I don't even know why he replaced it with a cat.
No, I mean, if he had the wherewithal to get a cat in the first place, there's no need to trick Joan Embery into bringing a cat in his presence.
Yeah.
And, yeah, what happened? That's a little unusual.
It was mostly just to make her uncomfortable,
Yeah.
because he said some things about cats being food.
Yes, which led her to her walking on. Yeah,
Unprecedented.
I tend to think that they probably would have just gone with the best of Carson that night on NBC, but
Yeah.
who's to say?
It would have been weird if they'd aired this in the Tonight Show slot.
That's what they should have done, yes. Just with no, advance or...
Yeah.
That, Johnny Carson probably would have had a fit if that happened.
Yeah.
I don't think they would have gotten away with that. And maybe Johnny felt threatened by Alf, What if Alf drew better ratings in that slot than Johnny,
Right.
Then that would have been a
Yeah.
feather in NBC's cap.
Even though it, just a stunt, and if they did it again, it probably wouldn't go over.
That's
But
correct.
still, to be Johnny Carson, be threatened by a puppet.
Hey, if Johnny didn't want to be threatened by anybody, he shouldn't have taken so many days off.
That's a good point. He took a lot of days off.
Right, he's definitely opening himself up for somebody to step in and,
Yeah.
sort of Lou Gehrig him onto the bench,
Right.
like Lou Gehrig did to Wally Pipp. 1927 or 1920s Yankees. Sorry.
Is it an introduction to the show? Maybe not.
I don't think so. I mean, there's definitely worse ways to introduce yourself to the character of Alf, but as far as like Alf the sitcom, it's more of a novelty and definitely not a typical episode of the series, I would say. But
Is Alf worth revisiting or visiting for the first time for our?
I don't know. As
listeners.
I'm saying that, I can't think of any classic episodes of ALF
No.
that I would point to. It's just something that seemed to be on, like, maybe I'd watch it. It doesn't seem to have been a huge hit in syndication or reruns over the years.
Yeah.
It's just kind of around. It seems like a very 1980s kind of phenomenon, and I don't know. I mean, it would be worth checking out a few episodes, but maybe not necessarily this one if you're just going to watch one or two.
Yeah. Maybe the first one.
Yeah, the first one, and really what you want to see are Alf and Willie episodes.
Yeah.
Like there was one where they're in a boxcar with a hobo. They show a clip of.
Yeah, I'm
it's
curious
like Tracy
about that.
Walter and I seem to remember that actually, because I just remember that episode. I remember one bit that sort of struck me as funny where Alf is singing. Was it the City of New Orleans? And he's singing "Good Morning America." He starts singing "Good Morning America, how are you?" or something. It's like, what's the next line or something? And Willie's just like, "Just be quiet, Alf." And Alf just be quiet, just be quiet, just be quiet. And I remember thinking that was funny. So they showed a clip of that episode. So I'd say, like you said, the heart of it was Alf and Willie going back and forth. And this episode didn't feature a lot of that, just in clip form. So
No.
check out an episode with Alf and Willie.
Yeah.
One of those ones. That's probably the way you want to go.
Thank you for doing your Max.
I
right
broke my
impression.
pledge, didn't I?
You didn't list him.
I thought I said that I wasn't going to do my fabled Max Wright impersonation, but
Oh, is that the one that was fabled?
yeah.
I used to be able to do one, and I was trying last night as I was watching. Like every time he said a line, I would try to repeat it, and I just couldn't get it anymore. His halting,
Yeah, well, I probably shouldn't have done
strangled
it now.
way of talking.
I'm sure it's not what it used to be in my younger years, so I may regret putting that out there. But I was so moved by the memory of that episode that I just went with it.
I understand. I didn't regale you with my Ed McMahon.
You did not, but there's still time.
I think I might have on another episode, though, so...
Something to look out for.
Yeah. Yes! That's really my my Phil Hartman Ed McMahon.
That was brilliantly set up. I thought you might work that in organically, but instead we just sort of talked about it, and then you just put it out there. That was something. But really, I think that's probably how you intended it the whole episode.
One thing from the show that you might learn, it might encourage you to watch the show if you really want to learn about saying hi-oh. They discuss that, and that also should come in an organic manner. So I'm not going to try that.
Yeah,
I've never really done that anyway.
So there's some
But
historical.
it was interesting because I recently had a reason to. I was making a comic in this same subgenre where I had some characters on a talk show that normally wouldn't be on a talk show, and there was a hi-oh in there, but I always thought it was hey-oh, and our friend Dan had written hi-oh in an email just before that, so that's the spelling I used, and it was clearly when Ed was explaining it, that was the correct, maybe not the exact spelling, but the I, and not the hey.
I think the hey-yo is more like the imitations and parodies of him. Somehow it became that. So this episode of ALF does have some historical significance for
it does. I think
devotees of Ed McMahon.
Yeah, and maybe Tonight Show aficionados would want to watch it.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
And put it into context.
I agree.
All right.
I think that's all we got on ALF. Tonight. This episode brought to you by Budweiser, the king of beers. Also brought to you by Beige, the Tommy Newsom collection exclusively from Sears. Also brought to you by Meow Mix, keeping cats happy and healthy so they can keep Melmacians happy and healthy.
All the shows A to Z and the facts. What's behind what you see? TV Guide, the whole world of TV. That's entertainment. The stars underneath all the glow and the news from the people who know TV Guide. It's a fabulous show, so buy a TV Guide and read TV Guide. That's entertainment.
Okay, welcome back to Battle of the Network Shows. It's time to play the TV Guide game again. And just as a recap, in the TV Guide game, we take some examples of my collection of old TV guides, And right now I'm going to pick at random from this TV Guide week a night of primetime television, read the offerings to Mike, and I'm going to try to guess what he would pick as what he would want to watch on that night. So, are you ready, Mike, to play?
Yep.
Okay, we got the week of August 18th to 24th, 1979. And flipping open the TV Guide, I've chosen Monday of that week. So this is Monday, August 20th, 1979. And this is a Chicago edition of TV Guide, so this will be Central Times. So we'll be doing 7 p.m. to 9 p.m., unlike like 8 to 10 p.m. that we would do like in an East Coast version. So don't let that throw you off, Mike. You ready?
Yep.
Here we go. Okay. On CBS at 7 p.m., we have a sitcom. It's a repeat. Not surprising because we're in August, by the way. Most of these are going to be repeats, but we've got The Bad News Bears. The Bears' second win in a row prompts Dr. Rapont, Catherine Hicks, to give Buttermaker, Jack Warden, a post-victory hug, a gesture the team interprets as a sign of romance. And there's actually a nice half-page ad here with the CBS asking, does the beautiful school principal have eyes for Buttermaker, or is he getting his signals mixed up? And it's a special night for Bad News Bears, the ad tells me, too. I'll show you that in a minute. And then on NBC at 7 p.m., we've got a repeat of Little House on the Prairie. In this episode, Mary, Melissa Sue Anderson, announces she can tell light from dark, raising hopes that she may be regaining her sight. Okay?
I don't think those...
hopes that will be cruelly dashed at
yes.
probably by the end of the episode.
When a bird gouges out her eyes.
Yes. Okay, and then ABC, it looks like, has Monday Night Baseball. And at press time, ABC planned to cover 2 of the following games on a regional basis. Expos Reds, Red Sox Twins, and Rangers Orioles. So I'm sorry I can't be more precise with that. But,
yeah. Well, and what's on 7:30 on CBS?
I'll get to that. On PBS, an old episode of Dad's Army, an old British sitcom. The men are in over their heads when they try to rescue Walker and Godfrey from a pumping station. They were on guard when a small bomb hit. So that's PBS.
Okay.
Okay, then at 7:30 on CBS, Dr. Seuss. This is a repeat, but it's a special. It's The Cat in the Hat. A whimsical cartoon about an audacious cat who's looking for his helpmates Thing 1 and Thing 2, a goldfish named Carlos K. Crinklebine, and a 3-handled family, Gradunza. So that pretty much covers... at 11 we've got John Calloway interviews on PBS.
Okay.
I'm sorry, on Channel 11, the
Channel
PBS
11.
station.
Okay.
Whose guest is author Calvin Trillin, author of American Fried. Popular humorist, writes for the New Yorker, I believe. So might be an option for you at 7:30. Okay, at 8 p.m. on CBS, we've got MASH. Caught in an artillery crossfire, the 407th takes shelter in a close, damp cave that brings out a secret fear in Hawkeye. Okay, and then on NBC at 8 o'clock, we've got a movie classified as a drama. The name of the movie is Love's Dark Ride. And even this is a repeat. It's a 1978 TV movie. It stars Cliff Potts as a man in a helpless and hopeless rage against his sudden blindness. Also starring Carrie Snodgrass, Jane Seymour, Shelley Novak, and Granville Van Dusen as Tom.
Granville Van Dusen.
Yes, and in the interest of full disclosure, I'm going to tell you what's on the independent Channel 9. I believe this is WGN 9, which became a superstation. But the 1979 Disco Music Awards. Awards are presented for the top disco music and performers of 1979. Categories include Best Male and Female Singers, Disco Song and Album, and Most Promising Male and Female Singers. Presenters include Sammy Davis Jr., Tony Orlando, Tony Dorsett, Hervé Villechaize, Adrienne Barbeau, Gloria Gaynor, and Peaches and Herb. And that's a 2-hour show, so that'll tie up for the rest of the night if you go with that. 8 o'clock on Channel 11.
So ABC's baseball,
Yes. ABC's pretty much booked for the night. On PBS, America at the Movies at 8 p.m., the American Film Institute produced this bicentennial tribute to the American spirit as reflected in motion pictures from 1915 to 1974. Let's go 8:30 at CBS after MASH. WKRP in Cincinnati. Andy tells a journalist that WKRP is just a run-of-the-mill station, and never mind that staffers may be inebriated, incarcerated, or simply running around in a carp suit. So that's what's going on WKRP. 9 p.m. on Lou Grant on CBS. A woman's 2-year search for her son's hit-and-run killer intrigues Rossi. At 9 p.m. on Channel 50, which is another PBS station in Chicago, is an episode of Poldark. Just thought I'd mention. I know you're a big fan of the original Poldark.
Yeah.
And I think that's covered. So the movie would still be on NBC at that point, baseball. So There's not a whole lot of options, but there's some interesting things. And to aid you in your choice, I'm going to show you the ad for CBS, which shows Bad News Bears and Dr. Seuss's The Cat in the Hat. That may influence your decision if you want to examine the ad there.
Okay.
Now, this is not an art ad. This is, well, the Dr. Seuss has
That's art. Yeah.
art from this cartoon, but there's a picture of Jack Warden and Catherine Hicks. Jack Warden sort of looking longingly at her, with a couple members of the team looking on with sort of snide looks on their faces at Coach. Could there be a love connection? I guess we'll find out.
And presumably lots of shenanigans with the kids.
I think
it sounds like either they're going to try to prevent this from happening or try to make it happen.
Yes, I believe. I think you're spot on with that.
Okay.
I've already made my decision on what I think. So okay.
I've made my choices.
Okay, you're ready?
Yep.
All right. At 7 p.m., I think I'm going to go with. I think you're going to be from 7 to 8. I think you're going to be watching CBS. I got Bad News Bears and Dr. Seuss.
You got that correct. And Bad News Bears, I was considering for what we'd like to see.
Ooh.
Because I definitely watched this as a kid.
The sitcom.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember much about it, other than it's the Bad News Bears, and that it featured Corey Feldman, a very young Corey Feldman, and Mino Palouse.
Yes, Mino Palouse actually makes the cast listing in the TV Guide description.
I don't remember anybody else. I couldn't quite remember who the Jack Warden played Buttermaker. So odds are this is what I was actually watching
right
that night.
Yeah.
And Cat in the Hat, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Plus, Bad News Bears, I can't see, as far as I know.
Yeah,
now,
the show's not available.
Little House is quite available.
Yeah.
Dad's Army, I don't know what that is. And, baseball. I don't know.
Well, we're not sure
They didn't sound like exciting games.
how meaningful those 3 games that they're choosing from are. There's not a lot of urgency in that description.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
We don't even know which game it would have been in Chicago.
Right, that's true. And one other mention I want to make is that Ogilvy in the Bad News Bears show is played by somebody named Sparky Marcus.
Nice.
Which is, exactly.
Do you remember what character Ogilvy is in the movie?
I didn't offhand, but looking at the picture, I'm looking at a kid in the picture in the ad here that I think probably looks like a kid that would be named Sparky Marcus.
Yeah, let me look at that.
And I'm letting Mike take a look at that. Isn't that Ogilvy?
The lower kid?
No, the upper
big
kid.
The
rather heavy set kid.
Yeah, no, that's right.
Okay.
Oh, that's a girl. The other one is the girl.
Yeah.
that
Okay, so you're enjoying Bad News Bears and Cat in the Hat.
Yep. Well done.
At 8 p.m., there's not a whole lot of choices here.
No.
I don't think you're going to be that intrigued by that TV movie, so it kind of made an easy call. I'm going to go with MASH.
I actually took a left turn here and chose the Disco Awards.
Ooh.
Again, based on not being able to see it.
Right.
I'm not a disco fan, and watching people lip sync, because I'm sure they are, isn't super exciting to me, but that list of presenters was quite a cavalcade of not necessarily disco-related people.
Yeah. Yeah, the Disco Music
Just
Awards.
Hervé Villechaize presenting an award. That's pretty interesting.
It's definitely an all-star cast. Well, I'm glad I read that then and gave you that option because, that's a special event as opposed to...
Now, that does, of course... I guess I could change the channel.
You could.
If I got bored, I would certainly take a look at Luke Grant or Poldark.
Yeah.
Luke Grant's something I want to watch now that we're probably going to talk about at some point.
Yeah.
Poldark's pretty awesome in its weird way.
Yeah, there weren't a lot of other options, really, so
yeah.
The Disco Music Awards are a particularly attractive feature at that time.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Okay.
Well, you threw me off, but I can't argue with that choice,
We seem to be going about 50-50 on these.
I see. Well, there's always some surprises,
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. All right.
Nothing gets you into it like TV Guide.
Join us next time for another exciting episode of Battle of the Network shows. Learn more, leave feedback, and suggest future episodes at battleofthenetworkshows.com. Follow us on Twitter at BatNetShows and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/battleofthenetworkshows. Just be quiet, Alf.
Yes.